Hey folks, Nathan here. This is my YouTube channel, and we're rounding out our look here at Ascension before moving on to the DC deck building game, as we're looking at my favorite deck building games overall in this playlist. So, in this episode, we're checking out the different promo packs that are available to AscensionGame.com for Ascension based on game day promos and pre-order promos and stuff like that from previous sets. Also, we're going to be taking a look at some of the odd little add-on packs that have been created called theme packs to go with the game also. All of these are cards that can be mixed in with any game, whether we're talking a large set, small set, or any combination thereof for Ascension. We'll hit these in no particular order really, except to hit the theme packs before promos. So we start with the Leprechaun pack. 12 new cards to add into the game. We have 3 Leprechauns. They all get put into the center row deck, or the center deck, also sometimes called the portal deck. It's a lifebound hero. When you play it, gain 2, that is 2 runes, acquire a pot of gold from either the end of the rainbow or from another player's control. What they mean by pot of gold is these 9 cards that sit outside the game that you can acquire when you play a Leprechaun. You can either take it from the ones sitting off to the side, or if some other player has played them, has them in play, you can take one from them. And a pot of gold by itself, when you play this, draw a card. When you play a Leprechaun, gain 1 honor. And it does note, do not shuffle these into the center deck at the beginning of the game. Put these off to the side in the end of the rainbow zone. So not a major new addition, but a new character entering the mix, a new lifebound hero who's able to get your runes when you play him, and get your pot of gold each time he comes out. And the pot of gold, when you play it, can gain you 1 honor each time you play them, which makes it valuable in terms of gaining more honor towards the end of the game. I should note that all 4 of the theme packs and some of the promo cards made their way into that Year 1 Collector's Edition as foil cards, which have the new card frames, and as is the case in the later sets, gray borders rather than black around cards that are meant to stay outside of the game or are otherwise special and not part of the center deck. Notice the Leprechaun is in black border. They do go into the center deck. This one's an old favorite of mine, the Rat King theme pack. You have 2 cards for Rat King. Right? It's a monster. When it flips out of the center row deck into the center row, or the center deck into the center row, there's a fate effect. Again, that happens as soon as a card enters the center row. When this enters the center row, place a giant rat on each other card in the center row. That's these. And you have a grand total of 10 of these included within this theme pack. This sits on top of whatever card is already there, and you have to defeat this to get to what's underneath. Any card underneath Giant Rat cannot be acquired, banished, or defeated until Giant Rat is banished or defeated. And when you defeat it, reward, gain 1. These also don't get shuffled into the main deck. Instead, they sit aside in what's referred to as the Rat's Nest zone. But you can defeat those individually, or there's another option. Defeat the Rat King who's out there and reward, gain 4 honor, and defeat all giant rats in the center row. So you can either knock out the individual giant rats for 1 power each, or build up 6 power and take out the Rat King at once, and you manage to defeat him and every other giant rat still sitting out there on top of a center row card. It's sort of a disruption of the normal flow of the game, but it's something that is easily managed. So I really do like adding in Rat King to most of the games that we play. And Rat King also has a foil new card frame version tucked away into the Year 1 Collector's Edition. In a similar vein, we then have another one that's a favorite, though for some reason for me not as much as the Rat King. I guess it's because Rat King came first, and I'm just used to that one more. We have the Rat Queen, which basically does the same thing, but adds a little twist to it. So again, 2 copies of the Rat Queen go into your center deck. When one of them comes out, giant rats are going to wind up coming out and covering up all the cards in the center row, and you have to either defeat them one by one to get to what's underneath, or you can defeat the Rat Queen and it wipes out all the other giant rats in the center row. The difference is, notice that fate instruction is much longer. Okay? Basically what's going to happen is when Rat Queen comes out, and it causes the giant rats to cover all those other cards in the center row, before there's any covering happening, you're going to pick up those cards in the center row and shuffle them, then deal them back out face down. So yes, you do have to defeat the giant rat to get to what's underneath, or defeat the rat queen to wipe out all the giant rats to get to what's underneath, but all of a sudden you don't know which card is underneath which giant rat. It's no longer a matter simply of, oh, well, I wanted that card, there's a rat on it, I'm going to go after that rat to get at that card. You never know which one is going to be underneath until they've been revealed once the rats are destroyed. Adds a nice, unique little twist to the typical Rat King gameplay with the Rat Queen. The woman, in this case, comes out a bit more complicated, and shouldn't that be the case? And again, as in the case of Leprechaun and Rat King, a foil, new frame version does appear in the Year 1 Collector's Edition. Now we check out the theme pack for Christmas time, Samael Claus. Samael being the name of the big bad early on in the Ascension storyline here. This is one that's not so much designed around disruption of the game like the Rat King and Rat Queen, or just an odd little mechanic that doesn't have much impact like the Leprechaun theme pack. This one can pack a huge punch if you're playing it wisely. What you have here are all cards that are going to be put into the center row, instead of any that are laid aside. 2 of Samael Claus, and 10 Samael's Little Helpers. And essentially what happens depends on which card winds up coming out. Samael's Little Helper. When it comes out into the center row, it can be defeated for 1 power. You immediately get the reward. Reward, gain 1 honor. Choose a player and put this in that player's discard pile. That, of course, means the next time that player has run out of cards to draw and the discard pile is then shuffled to become their new deck, this can then be pulled out. While in a player's deck, this is a hero, because monsters usually aren't in a deck, with the text, gain 1 power for each Samael's Little Helper you play or have played this turn, including this one. It's essentially a multi-unite card from well before the multi-unite mechanic existed. So, depending on how many of these you wind up pulling out in a turn and how many you have acquired, these can build up very, very quickly. There's 10 of them here, right? So, if you were to be someone who managed to get all 10 of them somehow, and let's say you get out 5 of them on a turn, which is a very lucky set of draws, but say you get out 5 on a turn, then all of a sudden, you've got 25 power from those 5 little cards that are introduced within Samael Claus. But that's not all. You also have Samael Claus himself, which exists as 2 different ones, and is a trophy monster, one of those ones that once defeated doesn't go into the void, it gets set aside and has an ongoing effect on the game. The reward when defeating him for 7 power. Gain 5 honor. Reveal cards from the center deck equal to the number of players in the game. So there's 4 players, 4 cards, 5 players, 5 cards, whatever. Choose 1 card revealed in this way for each player. It's like a gift, it's like Santa Claus. Each player acquires or defeats the chosen card for them without paying its cost. So in other words, you pull out a number of cards equal to the number of players, everybody gets one, but whoever acquired Samael Claus gets to choose and keep the best one for him or herself. Then you have the ongoing trophy, gain 2 power when you play a Samael's Little Helper. So again, going back to the idea of maybe we pulled out 5 Samael's Little Helpers, what if we maybe have 6 cards in our hand at the time, and we play 5 Samael's Little Helpers, again, very lucky draw here though, to get 25, that also adds another 10, thanks to Samael Claus here being played, 2 for each. So we're looking at 35 from just 6 cards. That's a lot of power. It's a very rare situation where you'd run into that, but the more Samael's Little Helpers you get, the more powerful they are. It's essentially, like I said, it's a multi-unite type of effect, except with a specific card rather than a card faction in the game well before the idea of multi-unite had been added into the game much later. And yes, once again, in the Year 1 Collector's Edition, you will get yourself a nice foil set of this specific theme pack. Now we'll come back to the theme packs, but also included in the Year 1 Collector's Edition will be a foil version of the various promos from the first year of the game. Those are included in what's referred to as Promo Pack 1 if you're trying to order cards directly in promo packs off the AscensionGame.com website. They include Kithis the Gatekeeper, Path Warden, Deep Drone, Vortex, Void Mesmer, Nether Snare, Journeyman Sage, Control Room, and Veda, Sage of Swords. Notice that in this case, these are all cards that have that newer card frame because I happen to have bought them more recently. They originally were released with the early version of the card frames. I would also note, though, interestingly, that while there are foil versions of these 9 cards inside the Year 1 Collector's Edition, for Void Mesmer, they give you 2. For Deep Drone, they give you 2. For Path Warden, they also give you 2. They've updated the cards in that Year 1 Collector's Edition to allow 2 per center row deck, or center deck, rather than just 1. The original versions of these promo cards, as being presented, didn't have a dot to tell you how many could be inside your center deck, whereas the foil ones inside the Year 1 Collector's Edition do, and actually give you enough of the cards to have all of them in the deck. So all of these allow 2 in the center deck, so they give you 2 each, whereas the other ones only allow, like Kithis, 1 with the 1 dot, but the original promo cards, as released with the new card frames at least, don't have any kind of indicator for how many you can have, and buying Promo Pack 1 gives you 1 of each. So you actually get 3 extra cards, all duplicates of another card, if you're looking for Promo Pack 1 by getting the Year 1 Collector's Edition than if you simply bought the Year 1 Promo Pack 1 off the website for about $9. We also have what's referred to as Promo Pack 2 if you're trying to pick these up from the AscensionGame.com store. Another pack of 9 promo cards, all from Year 2. Again, the current version you can pick up has the new card frames as reflected here. We have the cards Ender of Days, Hedron Flare, Ring of Life, Arha Sanctuary, Ascara of Fortune, Cetra, Guide of Ogo, Cobra the Sordid, Soul Collector, and Assimilation Plant. I like to think of Ender of Days as dropping the mic. Look at this card. If you manage to get up 10 power to get yourself out there and defeat Ender of Days, the reward is you gain 10 honor, which is a ridiculous amount, and we remove all honor from the honor pool. In other words, because honor being gone from the honor pool is what causes the end of the game, you gain 10 and bring the game to a screeching halt. Very, very cool card. Crazy powerful, but again, I like to think of it as sort of the Ascension version of dropping the mic. All of these also get a foil version, this time in the Year 2 Collector's Edition, and in this case, all of them are 1 per center deck, so you just have 9 cards either way, whether you're getting the regular version off the website, or you're picking up the foil version as part of the Year 2 Collector's Edition. That brings us to what the website calls Promo Pack 3. Now you'll notice these are all still in their original card frames from earlier in the game's life cycle. They're still selling these as part of the pack rather than an updated frame version, and these have no foil equivalent yet in any of the Collector's Edition. We're beyond the scope of Year 1 and Year 2 at this point. But Promo Pack 3 comes with 9 cards again. We have Eye of the Serpent, Lotus Siren, Big Bad Bunny, Moonstaff, Raving Prophet, Shuffletron 2K13, or 2013, Mudfin Angler, Tinkering Monk, and Constricting Horror. Me personally, I like Big Bad Bunny. Big Bad Bunny is kind of like some of those theme packs that we've seen with the rats and whatnot, except kind of in a good way. He's like a corrupt, crazy Easter Bunny type of character. When he comes out into the center row, you wind up sticking a new card from the center row underneath all of the center row cards face down. And then when you acquire the card that's on the top, you also acquire, without paying its cost, the card that's underneath. It's a lot like the treasure card mechanic that was introduced back in Rise of Vigil, except without them being called treasure cards, and with them being any type of card from the center row rather than a specific card type. Cool to play Big Bad Bunny. That brings us to 2014 and Promo Pack 4, according to AscensionGame.com. Again, if you're trying to buy them through the store there. 10 cards this time rather than 9, and you'll notice they're a mixture of the old style and the new style of card frames. It's just because of the era in which these cards were being produced originally. We have Miles, Golden Prodigy, 9, or N-I-N-E, David, Prophetic Guide, Tower of Ascendancy, Vault of the Ascara, Ogo Tracker, Mistress of Blades, Covetous Kraken, Ethereal Huntress, and The Looking Glass. I'm a particular fan in this pack of Covetous Kraken, because when it enters the center row, each player puts the top card of their deck face down underneath that card. and then when someone defeats it for 6 power, they gain 6 honor, but also acquire all the cards under it, and they go directly into that player's hand. So it really sort of fits the idea of covetous and a kraken with the long, multiple arm kind of reach. I dig that one, along with really the Looking Glass, which is one that basically sits off to the side as a construct after you played it, and if there's not a card underneath it, you reveal the top card of the center deck and stick it underneath that, and then you can acquire or defeat cards underneath that as if they were in the center row, but it's only you that's able to do that. So in a sense, it's similar to the idea of a dreamscape, taking a card and sitting it aside only for you to acquire once you've got enough of whatever currency there is to acquire it. That brings us to 2015 and Promo Pack 5. Again, also 10 cards, all with the new card frames because of when they were originally issued out. We have Disciple of Sadranus, Foul Replicant, Cetra, Benefactor of All, Nixian Corruptor, Defender of Vigil, Forest, Beast Warden, Riss, Dark Muse, Michelle, Star Oracle, Sadistic Laboratory, and Eye of Potential. Personally, if you're playing a game that uses the rally mechanic, like if you're playing Dawn of Champions, Riss Dark Muse is a cool one to use. You have reward, gain 6 honor. While this is in the center row, right, before it has been defeated, all heroes and constructs have rally for their faction. So you'll be doing a lot of rallying, perhaps a lot of free card acquisitions. And then once defeated and stuck over to the side, because it is an ongoing trophy monster, during your turn, all heroes and constructs have rally for their factions, and all monsters have rally monster. In other words, she's a rallying machine. Also from 2015, we then have the Play Deck promo pack, named after the company that handles the digital version of Ascension. And this has 4 different cards in it, and you have 5 of one, 4 of another, and 2 of the other 2. So we have 2 copies of Temporal Excavator. Basically with Temporal Excavator, when you play a Mechana construct on your turn, including this particular one when you're first putting it out, you add a card to the center row. So in theory, the center row could grow well beyond just having 6 cards in it. Eternal Tormentor is all about defeating a monster and then essentially reincarnating it to kick its ass all over again. You defeat a random monster in the void, one that's already dead, without paying its cost, and then put it at the bottom of the center deck so it can be played again and defeated again, and so on and so on. 2 copies of that one. Then we have Explosive Swarm, 4 that go in your center deck, and 5 that sit outside ready to be used when called for by the effect of the card. They all say the same thing though. When a hero or construct adjacent to this would be replaced, replace it with a copy of this instead. So in other words, if I'm playing with the center row and I defeat Explosive Swarm for 4, that's it, it's just gone. But if I defeat what's next to it instead, rather than pulling a new center row card to put in that spot, I grab one of these gray-bordered Explosive Swarms and stick that adjacent to it instead. Essentially, the swarm will just keep growing and growing and growing, theoretically, until you take out the swarm itself. Before we move back to the theme packs and such, I should point out that there are other promo cards available out there that are newer than any of the packs they've offered on the website, such as Chaos Rider, which is a pre-order bonus that you got for pre-ordering War of Shadows. Presumably, another batch of these promo cards is going to wind up in, say, promo pack number 6 or 7 or 8 as we go along. But so far, there's just the 5 plus the play deck one at this point. Let's move back to the theme decks. Here's a weird one for you, the Valentines theme pack. You have essentially your rules on one card with just the front of the pack as it's packaged up, showing there on the other side. And basically what you have here is 10 copies of a new always available card that you stick up there with your Cultist, your Mystic, your Heavy Infantry, and the Fanatic, depending on which set you're playing with. And they're all able to be defeated for 3 power. When you defeat it, boom. For 3 power, reward, gain 1 honor, gain the Valentine on the opposite side of this card. And the back of it is themed Valentines that happen immediately. And then eventually when you run out of these, you just reshuffle them and send them back to the always available area. Like Be Mine, gain 2 runes. Each other player gains 1 rune on their turn. Let's Be Friends, gain 2 honor. Each other player gains 1 honor. I'm Drawn to You, draw 2 cards. Each other player draws 1 card. You Fill the Void in My Heart. Each player may banish a card from their discard pile. I'm fallen for you. Each other player discards a card. So barring that I'm fallen for you, that winds up having a negative effect by having players discard cards other than you, they're all basically, you get something cool, and everybody else gets a little something too. Aw, happy, happy, joy, joy, Valentines. Here's another fun theme pack, the Location theme pack. The idea is that all of these cards, which have standard card backs, get shuffled into the center row. When you pull one out to put it in the center row, it acts kind of like a treasure card, and that it sits there, and then you continue flipping center row cards on top of it until you wind up with a standard card. In other words, a hero, a monster, or a construct, right? And each of these has an effect specific to that space in the center row as long as it's sitting there. And unless somebody comes in and banishes the thing somehow, it's going to sit there and continue to have an effect throughout the game. You have 2 each of 6 different locations with 6 different effects. Rift's Edge, Stone Circle, Arha Dojo, Hedron Sanctum, Path of Trials, and Cetra Shrine. So for instance, Rift's Edge sits there as a location. Monsters in this space cost 2 power less to defeat to a minimum of 1 power. Or Hedron Sanctum. Constructs in this space cost 2 runes less to acquire to a minimum of 1 rune. Path of Trials. When a card in this space is acquired or defeated, acquire or defeat the card that replaces it without paying its cost. Then banish this location. And so on, and so on. It basically turns the positions in the center row into something that is a little bit different depending on which space you're in, instead of all the spaces essentially being identical and the order of the cards in it usually not making much difference, if any at all. Now this next theme pack or promo pack is actually one that's not yet available on AscensionGame.com, though presumably it will be in the future. This is something that a buddy of mine was able to acquire for me, I believe, at Gen Con recently. And the idea is that these are portal cards. They exist in the digital game, though they have a slightly different way of working. In the digital game, it's more about them just kind of becoming any card that could possibly be there from other sets. In this case, it's not assuming you own any other sets, so it's a mechanic designed to work with the center deck. But you basically have 4 each of 3 different versions of the portal card. One that costs 2, one that costs 3, one that costs 4. Again, 4 copies of each of those types. And in any case, what you're doing is, when you acquire this, so buy it for 2 runes, 3 runes, 4 runes, whatever, okay, you're going to reveal cards from the center deck until you reveal a card with a certain cost. And then you'll acquire or defeat that card without having to pay the cost, and then put any other cards you have drawn to eventually get to that card into the void. In other words, banishing them from the game at that point. If you get the one that costs 2 runes, then the card you can pull from the center deck is going to be something that costs either 2, 3, or 4 runes. Okay? If it's going to be something from the 3 rune portal, it's going to be 3, 4, or 5 cost that you get to keep. If it's the 4 rune portal, it's going to be a 4, 5, or 6 cost item that you get to keep. So it's a way of basically getting something for free that may wind up being of greater value in terms of rune cost than the cost you paid. At worst, it's going to be the exact same, right? The lowest amount that you could have a card valued at that you get to keep is 4 for the rune 4, 3 for the rune 3, 2 for the rune 2. So it winds up being something that's a bit of a gamble, but it's not going to hurt you in any way. And finally, we save one of the weirdest and one of my favorites here for last. That is something that is available on AscensionGame.com, and that is Hedron Dreidel. Yes, Dreidel. As in, Dreidel, 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 I made you out of clay, and all that kind of stuff. A friggin' Dreidel here. Okay. It's in the center row. You acquire it for 5 runes. There's 2 different copies of it that can sit inside the center row or the center deck to eventually wind up in the center row. And the mechanic there is once per turn, when you put this or another Mechanic construct into play, spin the Dreidel. So it's a construct, so when you play it, it sits there on the side, so it's always in play unless something banishes it. So when you play it or any other Mechanic construct, then you spin the Dreidel. The Dreidel will eventually go plop. Whoa. And you'll get either +2 honor, get to draw a card, +2 runes, or +2 power, right? Because the Dreidel's got 4 sides that have something written on it. It spins on the bottom, and it's got the spinner handle there on the top. So just a cool way of getting some random odd thing to add to your turn, but done in such a way that it's not random by some kind of choosing a number or picking a number of cards. It's literally by spinning a dreidel. Odd, but I think it's pretty cool. I mean, how many other games could say they've got a dreidel as part of their game mechanics? I hope you've enjoyed this look at the Ascension deck building game over these last few episodes of Nate's favorite deck building games. We will be checking out more deck building games in the near future and more of Ascension as more things are released. Next up, though, we shift our focus from Ascension, where it's been for several episodes now, to another great deck building game that follows many similar concepts, the DC deck building game. That's right, DC Comics coming up.